Hey guys, Mr. Amari here with another tutorial. Today I'm going to walk you through some basic game design using Scratch. Today we're going to talk about how to start making our very own clicker or idle game. Clicker or idle games are games where you simply click on an item to make a number go up, and then you use what you're accruing in that number to be able to unlock new upgrades so that you can make your numbers go up faster even while you're not playing. That's the idle part of the game. One of the most famous versions of this is the game Cookie Clicker. In Cookie Clicker, again, you go ahead, you click some cookies, and you go ahead and you click enough cookies until you can get yourself an upgrade. So I can go ahead and grab that, and I have myself an upgrade where I can change how many cookies I'm getting per second. You see now I'm getting 0.1 cookies per second here, even when I'm not clicking. So the idea here is to keep the player playing so they can see what the next upgrade will be, and so that they can make their numbers go even higher, even when they're not actively clicking on their cookies. So let's look into how we can start making our own version of a game like this. So obviously we need to start by selecting a sprite that we're going to be clicking on. Thankfully, Scratch comes with a bunch of pre-rendered sprites that we can all pick from. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the beetle here. I'm going to make mine themed around catching bugs instead of clicking cookies. You can make yours themed around anything you want, and we might do a later video on how to effectively theme your game. For now, I'm just going to be using these sprites to be able to show you the basics of how the gameplay is put together and how to code the overall gameplay loop of a clicker game. So once I have my beetle out here, I want to make sure that I label it. So I'm going to go into my sprite, make sure it's selected, and then go into the costumes so I can adjust it from the canvas. This is the canvas where we're going to be able to change things like the color. We can delete parts of the sprite if we want to, or even draw on it. I'm not going to do anything that drastic. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit so I have a space underneath it. Then I'm going to click over here on this text tool. And then I'm going to click right below the bug. This will allow me to be able to type in my label, beetle. And then when I want to fine-tune the adjustment on it where it's saying when I want to fine-tune the placement for it, I click the select arrow, and then I just move it until it's sitting where I want it to sit. And we can see over here in our preview window what it's going to look like. If I want to change where my beetle is, I want to change it on the preview window, not on my canvas. We want to make sure that everything on our canvas is centered. The way we do that is when we click on our sprite, you'll see there's a little crosshair in the middle. We have to make sure that that is actually centered on the center of the canvas. Okay, so now we have our beetle labeled and we want to make it actually start doing something. First, we need to add an event block to start the game. We can start with something as simple as when the green flag is clicked. This way, when the green flag is clicked, I can tell the game to do something. I'm going to make sure that when the green flag is clicked, my beetle is going to show up and actually be on the screen. To do that, I'm going to go into looks, and I'm going to go find the show block and click it onto the bottom. Now, even with the green flag being clicked, I can't do anything to the beetle. What I need to do is I need to add another block called when this sprite is clicked. That's in the events section. This way I can now give code for what will happen when I actually click on the sprite. So, if we're looking at something like Cookie Clicker, again, we want my score to go up when I'm clicking it. Well, we want a similar thing to happen here with our beetle. I want my score to go up, but as you can see, I don't have a score. In order to add a score of some sort, we need to add what's called a variable. Variables are numbers that the program is going to remember and that will change over the course of the game. To create a variable, we go down to the left side here where it says variables in our little menu, and you'll see a button that says make a variable. When you click on that, it'll ask you to name it. For me, since mine is bug themed, I'm going to put bugs in jar. This way, it's themed around the idea of, well, I'm catching these bugs. I'm going to make sure it's clicked for all sprites and hit OK. This way the variable can be used and talk across all the sprites I'm going to use. Once I have that, you see that I have a bunch of options for my bugs in a jar. What I want to have happen is when the sprite clicks, I want this number to go up by 1. So we have a block here that says change bugs in jar by 1. you'll notice that it's a drop-down menu. It means that I can actually go ahead and select any variable that I currently have made for this block. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the change bugs in a jar by 1 and put it under when this sprite is clicked. Now when I click the green flag and I click the beetle, you can see that, hey, it goes up. You can see that, hey, it goes up. And you'll notice that it's going up by 1 every time I click. That's good. It's just not as satisfying as, say, what's happening here in Cookie Clicker. Part of that's because my sprite's actually moving as I click, and I'm getting a little sound effect every time I click it too. That helps keep me as the player invested in what's happening here. So I'm going to do the same thing for my beetle here. First thing I'm going to do is create a little animation so when it clicks, it gets a little bit smaller and then it goes back to the size it was when it started. To do this, we're going to go into our looks block and we're going to look for the set size to block. You'll see that by default, it's set size to 100%. We don't want that to happen when the sprite is clicked. We want it, when it's clicked, to get a little bit smaller. So we're going to make it when the sprite is clicked, set size to, and we're going to make it 90%. This way, when I click it, it gets a little bit smaller. But as you can see, it gets that size and doesn't pop back. In order to make it pop back, we need to get another set size to block, set size to 100. See, but now it just stays at 100 because nothing is differentiating between the 90 and the 100. These blocks of code are happening at the same exact time. So what we're going to do is we need to put a little bit of a wait block in between here so that we can see the change in size. So we're going to go into our control section. You'll see the very first block we have is a wait block. So I'll grab the wait block and put it right in between set size to 90 and set size to 100. Now if I click on my beetle, well, it's going to change size, but it does so very slowly because it's waiting a full second. What I can do to speed that up is change the speed here. Let's say I make it 0.5, so half a second. Still a little too slow for me. So what I can also do is just make it 0.05. Oh, there we go. That's giving us that nice, satisfying kind of pop-in feel when I click. So far we have our bugs in jar going up. We have our sprite changing size and going back. We're missing sound effects here though. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead into sound and I'm gonna find a block that says start sound. Now you'll notice that there's one that says play sound until done. We want to avoid using this one. If I use this one, it'll play a sound and won't play the sound again or do any of the code underneath it until that sound is done playing. What this means is if I start clicking faster than the sound can finish, we will have some bugs in our game. What we want instead is the start sound block. This is because every time I click my sprite now, it will restart the sound every single time. So now I have it already set to pop, and this is the default sound when you pick out the start sound button. And we're gonna leave it on that because it actually works pretty well. So when I click on it, I get that really satisfying pop sound. So this is all pretty good, but we're noticing that if I stop my game and start my game again, my bugs in a jar don't reset. We want it so that my bugs in a jar reset back to 0 whenever I start a new game. So what we need to do is, under where it says when the green flag is clicked, we're going to put another block that tells the variable to reset to 0. In variables, you'll see set bugs in jar to 0. And now when I click green flag, those bugs in jar now set to 0. You can make this any variable you want, but for our purposes, we're going to set this to 0. So far, so good. So now, I want my game to stand out a little more. I want to go that extra mile. I want to add a little more visual interest to my beetle here. One thing I can do, and that Scratch makes really easy, is I can change certain effects about my sprites using the code blocks that we have in the looks section. So if we go into looks, you'll see that I have change size, switch costume. There's all these different things I can do. One thing I'm going to focus on right now is the change color effect one. So the change color effect allows you to change the shade of your sprite by a certain numerical value. Every color has a number assigned to it. And what you can do is you can change the colors that your sprite starts as by changing the numeric value of the color in the code. So all I have to do is take this change color effect by 25, put it right there on the bottom of my code where it has when the sprite is clicked. And now when I click the sprite, you're going to see that the sprite is changing color by 25. What that means is whatever shade this is, it then, when I click it, looks up what the next shade 25 numbers up is. And then it just keeps doing that. You can change this to be a smaller number if you want. You're going to get less drastic changes, and it will change slowly over time if you do that. If you make it a bigger number, it will be just a very more drastic change. 25 seems to be the sweet spot where we get a lot of different variations as we click. So this is how we make our beginning sprite and our first click for our clicker game. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to make our first upgrade and how to make it so that we can have something where we're getting bugs in a jar per second as opposed to having to click every single time. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.